Hello there, and a very warm welcome to Happy Times and Places, this positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Hadoke, ask a friend to choose a Doctor Who story. I'll watch it and commentate along and see if I can guess their favourite things about it.
Hello, I'm Richard Smith, and I've been a fan of Doctor Who for almost 50 years. If you've heard of me at all, and you probably haven't, it'll be as the host of the podcast Something Who. Something Who generally discusses two Doctor Who stories, one from the original series and one from the modern series, usually with some sort of thematic connection. I've chosen the two-part 10th Doctor story, Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead.
Oh, well, lovely to have Richard Smith on board, who is part of the Something Who podcast, which I enjoy whenever I listen to it. They put two contrasting, all related Doctor Who stories together, but the relationship can sometimes be the most tenuous kind. But no, there are interesting juxtapositions, and they have interesting people chatting about the stories. And I've often found them a fun way to pass the time. A fun way to pass the time today for me. Oh, I've got so many things I should be doing for you. I'm trying to write another Indefinable Magic or two. I'm trying to finish off a couple of episodes of Too Much Information, but I want to get something out there, and so I'm going to finish off this library two-parter, which my friend Andy Murray reminded me when I was chatting with him and John Deere this morning. I say chatting, we were WhatsApping, which is the modern replacement for face-to-face parlance among friends, that this story was watched in the fallout from the announcement of fallout. Makes it sound bad and infectious, but okay. In the glare, in the summer glare, in the celebratory crossfire of the announcement of Stephen Moffat becoming showrunner. That had been announced on the 20th of May 2008, and Silence in the Library was broadcast on the 31st. So yeah, we're in this is watched in the knowledge that the guy whose brainchild this kind of Doctor Who adventure is going to be the person in charge of the whole series. And I remember definitely there was excitement, because I was felt a lot like a lot of people that the single Moffat entries during the RTD era were the high watermark often, and my favourite adventures of the year. I'm not sure that was the case this year, because the competition was slightly stiffer, wasn't it? And every week seemed to be a banger. But I still liked this. But as I say, I think I'd gone into it expecting to be blown away, and I found the approach of this one, which is very thoughtful and slightly different. Particularly with this episode, which there are moments where it takes some sort of tonal digressions that I wasn't sure about at the time. Again, not that I disliked them, but it stopped it from being the empty child, blink, But actually, I think I would probably, I love the empty child, but I'm always slightly reluctant to go back and watch it, even though I think it's brilliant and the best story of that year in a way. It's odd, isn't it? But maybe I like it more because I've watched it less. But if I'm in the mood for just to sort of switch off and enjoy a Doctor Who, but then again, I don't switch off when I watch this one. But I find it an easier watch for some reason. I probably watched this more than I've watched The Empty Child, which is interesting, because if you were to pin me in a corner and say which one's the better story, I'd probably say The Empty Child, and yet I probably seek to watch this one more. So I don't know, there's a difference, isn't there, between best and favourite, and sometimes what you're in the mood for. Anyway, let's hear what the small number of respondents. I haven't given the good denizens of Patreonville much time to upload their responses to this. And again, I was going to hold off and try and do an Indefinable Magic or Too Much Information, but I need to do something. So it's going to be a short burst of correspondence, beginning with Jack Sharp, who says, "This story has an interesting logical problem that's never really discussed. The Vashta Narada coming in via the books would suggest the infestation happened relatively quickly after opening, and indeed the Ages of Cal and her relatives seems to suggest that the library wasn't open for long before it closed. So it's quite unbelievable that it has this legendary status, enough for the Doctor, so big he doesn't need a name, to have heard of it. Likewise, why were there only a few hundred people in this library? There are normal Earth libraries with more visitors at once than that, yet this one is apparently a whole planet. I suppose that's one way to keep the library quiet. Yes, perhaps there's a sort of a sort of maximum distance. You can be a minimum distance. You can be close to the next person, so the library's quiet because nobody can hear. Because even if you sneeze, people are too far away. I'm starting to suspect that this whole Vashta Narada thing was intentional. They saw the terrible footfall at this place they'd invested so much money into, so decided to try and wreck the place as a tax write-off while bigging it up in the marketing to make everyone feel they really loved it. My main objection to River Song is that she only really works as a long-running character, but she's introduced in season 30 and effectively written out in season 35, with the bulk of her interactions being with only one Doctor. So I feel her potential is wasted. Yes, of course, because they can't go back and make Doctor Who stories in the past and add River Song to them, of course. Keith Say says, "My class at school had 2 Keiths, 2 Roberts, 2 Shawns, 2 Rachels and 3 Claires. How confusing was that?" Oh, this is in response, of course, to the Proper Dave, Other Dave musings. Jack Sharp comes back in and says, "I was one of 5 Jacks and 2 Sharps. All the teachers thought that the other Sharp was my sister's brother too." How very confusing. There is an advantage to being the only Toby, I suspect in all of time and space, the only Toby Hadoke ever, because the confluence of those 2 very silly names is a rare space-time event. Jason Thompson. Oh, we always get something interesting from Jason. What does he say? "Deadly shadows and dust motes is a very Doctor Who idea." Dust motes? Is it dust mites? I don't know. And it's certainly not dust moles. Maybe a dust mote is a thing, and I am ignorant. I suspect so, because Jason is not daft. And I love the notion of a planet-sized library, but why at the end of the next episode, and that's the episode we're about to watch, does a swarm of creatures that can strip his flesh in less than a second back off from the Doctor because he tells them to read how awesome he is? Oh, now you put it like that, Jason. Not only that, they let him take all their food, the saved humans, as well, so presumably they starve. It's something Stephen Moffat does a few times that I don't care for, the Doctor waving his reputation around as an effective defence against an overwhelming force. I prefer him to be someone who actually comes up with solutions to get out of things, rather than just telling enemies how great he is, and that being enough to deter them. Yes, I think that is not an unfair comment, Jason, and I have to say, as somebody that is, not physically imposing or anything like that, if I was up against somebody and I needed to defeat them, and let's face it, the monsters need to defeat Doctor Who, and let's take out of the equation that they're the baddies. Nobody sees themselves as the baddies. So if I was in the monsters' position and my enemy, as it were, stood in front of me and I had a gun and they had nothing, and they went, "Yeah, but I'm great, so you should be scared of me," I'd go, "Well, in that case, I shall take this opportunity to shoot you, because if you come back at an advantage, I'm going to be in real trouble." And I would say that's a purely practical solution, let alone if I was an evil space creature, I'd definitely be like, "Well, you're an idiot then, aren't you? Because you're currently defenseless." And so, yeah, your reputation is no shield. But, yeah, thanks, Jason. Thanks for ruining it just as I'm about to go in and watch the episode. David Green, such a clever story. We have some yin to Jason's yang. I, too, have sometimes struggled to instantly enjoy some of Stephen Moffat's stories at first viewing. Their value instead often becomes more apparent with each rewatch. The story threads all join up, but you need to pay attention. I sometimes wonder whether Douglas Adams, had he lived to the New Who era and contributed to it, would have written in much the same style. Bold jokes and equally bold and mad sci-fi ideas, all made entirely normal. Great stuff. Yeah, that's a nice advocacy, David. Thank you. Adam Parkin says, This was the only episode of Series 4 that I saw live as it went out. I had a job at the time that included weekend work. Oh, the humanity, Adam. I knew so many Daves at university. The proper other Dave thing has certainly got tongues a wagging here. I knew so many Daves at university that they all had nicknames. Chemistry Dave, studied chemistry. Thai Dave had been on a gap year teaching English in Thailand, etc. I was Beardy Adam, to distinguish from non-Beardy Adam, in the same halls. We never met, but had some overlapping friends. Independently, halfway through the year, I shaved off my beard, and he grew one. But we kept the same nicknames. I love that. Matt Foy. I remember loving this at the time. The run of this two-parter, Midnight and Turn Left. Oh, excuse me. I'm very tired. Oh, I played cricket. I played cricket on Sunday for the Showbiz /Emmerdale / whoever they could get team. And I was not a bowler in my youth, but I worried I would be very rusty. But when I got there, I was actually not in. We were augmented by 3 proper cricketers because we hadn't got enough people and we needed somebody to be in charge. But I was third bowler on by dint of the fact that I'd played cricket before, and they didn't want to make us top heavy with the people who could actually play. And my bowling was praised, even though I was not a bowler at school. But I kept it tight. I didn't take a wicket. Somebody did drop. One of them dropped a catch, and I think the rumour was they didn't want to catch their mate, which I could have done with the charity, to be honest. But I bowled pretty tight. It was all right, a couple of wayward balls, but I was. And then when some of my colleagues bowled who couldn't even keep their arms straight, I was definitely in the top tier of bowlers that we had, and I fielded in some of my favourite positions as well. So I cut off some runs and did some backing up. I was not bad. And then I went into bat, and they let me open the batting. And I've always sort of stuck around as a batsman, but I foolishly ran myself out. I thought they would be a bit generous because it was a charity game and we were a bunch of actors, but their competitiveness was such that they wouldn't let me take a cheeky run, and I'm annoyed now because I could have stuck around. But we won. We won with 4 balls to go, so that was very good. Good old the cricket. But that's why I yawned, because I'm tired, because my body is aching because I spent a day standing around on a cricket pitch. Matt Foy, I remember loving this at the time. The run of this two-parter, Midnight and Turn Left, is up there with anything in New Who. The cliffhanger is wonderful, and Catherine Tate is amazing in the next episode. Well, there we have it. So, how interesting. Let us see what is offered to us now as we watch episode 2 of Silence in the Library, as it would have been called in the old days, but it is called on its own Forest of the Dead, and it was broadcast on the 7th of June 2008, so about 3 weeks after the announcement of Stephen Moffat as showrunner. So this was a vision of the future. And let us press play. I'm on iPlayer. I don't know where you are, but however you choose to watch it or not, which I'm sure from the feedback I've got is pretty much everybody. Let us go in 3, 2, 1. So I got a BBC trailer then, so you might want to skip forward about 20 seconds. So here we have a reminder of what has happened last week. I do love a reminder because it reminds you of all the stuff you liked about the episode you watched last time. And I do like the episode we watched last time. But also, of course, it's a clue as to which plot threads you should have in your head and are going to be resolved. I quite like it sometimes with American series where they do a previously on and they refer to something that happened in like episode 3 and we're now on episode 20 and you're like, oh, so you're going to be paying that off now, are you? It's a kind of prompter to what to expect. Yeah, and I sometimes think, if you were doing in Web of Fear 6 now and a previously on, you'd have a clip of saying, somebody's helping the intelligence, and then you'd have a clip of Sergeant Arnold. But anyway, it's Moffat more than anybody makes his episode 2s very different from his episode ones. And we don't quite get that here, but we do get something that's tonally refreshed in terms of Donna's plot angle, which was not what we expected, and it kind of mirrors the sort of family dynamic of the girl in her room with Dr. Moon and her dad. You know, it's this unsettling domesticity, which is a nice thing to have for Doctor Who, because Doctor Who is all about taking the familiar and making it strange. But I wonder if I felt at the time that we got two strands that had that, which seemed like an overabundance of normality. And I was much more interested in what was going on with the, stalking monsters and we'd already set up the gun, which is a bit like that gun that Captain Jack had is in the Doctor Dances. I wonder how I'm glad Mark Dexter's been back in Doctor Who, but I wonder how he felt, because when it's a good part he's playing, he gets lots of screen time and lots to do. But if you get a call saying they want you to be in Doctor Who, you're like, great, what am I playing? A brave soldier, or somebody who finds themselves in a scary situation with lots of guns and aliens and things, or an evil alien. No, you're a dad who sort of cleans glasses and talks to his daughter. He's like, oh, I can do that in other programs. I wonder if part of him wanted to sort of hang on and go, can't I play somebody from space? But he gets to play an historical character in Spyfall, so he's come back. He's a good actor. So here is Catherine Tate, who I think did prove herself to be an exceptional actress in Doctor Who. I mean, she was very good in the Catherine Tate sketch show, although I never found the sort of the sense of humour that was dispensed in her shows quite fulfilled the hope I had for them, because I like a sketch show and I like character shows, but I was never wild about the Catherine Tate show, so I didn't come in biased for or against her. I'd given her show a chance. It was like, yeah, it's fine, I get it, and it's obviously well performed, but tonally it's all quite similar. So I wasn't a fan, as I would say, of Catherine Tate. But I'm not one of those, oh, they're terrible, just because somebody hasn't quite made me laugh despite their best efforts. I'm always grateful if people try to make me laugh, but maybe I'm biased because I try to make people laugh and would rather, if I didn't, people would just go, oh, okay, you didn't quite pull that off, rather than, you're the worst person in the world, you're not a comedian, or whatever. So here we have Lee, who has a stammer, which is interesting, because if you are so inclined, you could be angry about this. And I need to talk. I have a couple of friends who have stammers, and somebody I don't know particularly well who has a very pronounced one. I have a bit of a one in everyday conversation if I'm not careful. But I don't read this as, real life is actually is we say things. I mean, I make jokes to Cheryl Lee, who has a disability, that if somebody else said about her, I would find hugely offensive. But obviously I love her, and obviously I think she's the best person in the world, and I'm full of admiration for her. But we say sometimes mean things to people. We love to show a certain sort of intimacy. We're allowed to say, now you could say, well, that's hypocritical. Well, no, it isn't, because the relationship is different. And I think, again, the sort of nuances and humanity that we have means that, somebody who loves you can say a mean thing to you without them being awful. In the same way that I have very, very bad psoriasis, and I'm very self-conscious about it. I remember the comedian Joe Lycett at my gig once conjuring an image, and I can't remember what it was, but the reason for it was about some sort of boomerang. But that was, I can't remember why it was shedding stuff. But anyway, that the image he conjured was like a croissant with psoriasis, which, even though when I can contemplate my psoriasis, and sometimes when I've had it, it's made me deeply upset and deeply unhappy and greatly in pain, I cannot deny that objectively that image of a croissant with psoriasis, in terms of its phraseology, in terms of its sound, and in terms of its invention, is really funny, irrespective of how invoking psoriasis might personally make me feel. And I think sometimes if something is well intentioned, we should take it as that. But I've fallen down a rabbit hole. It's a sign of how toxic conversation can sometimes be around stuff. Because, we used to, I think back in the day of, there was some obviously prejudiced stuff being thrown out there as entertainment, and we found fault with it. And now I think we're programmed to do that. But I think there's maybe a need to take the foot off the accelerator with some of that stuff and just accept it on its own terms. But then again, I am not someone with a stammer, and it may be, well, not a pronounced one. And it maybe there are people that find that character or that interaction not nice, but as I say, I kind of read it as she obviously loves him, and Donna is somebody who is quite outspoken and sometimes crass, and you can be crass and still a good person. So it's not the writer being evil about people with a stammer, it's the writer saying, how would somebody who expresses themselves like Donna interact in this situation? And maybe also he finds it refreshing that lots of other people don't refer to it, and that he finds she's treating him like a human. I've certainly found that in some cases with disabled friends of mine who prefer it when people actually acknowledge something rather than do the does he take sugar kind of thing. So it's complicated, as I say, and I would always say, try to assume the best motives of the person who's written a thing to try to entertain you and make you happy, rather than assume they're awful because of what you think of them. Anyway, I think the mystery of Donna in her new world is better than I'd remembered, because I think my overarching sort of thinking of it when I come into this episode is, she spends a lot of time just having this happy life, in parallel to the Doctor's adventures in the library. But actually, the fact that Dr. Moon comes in, the fact that the Doctor himself appears, the world is, the fact that time keeps jumping, there's enough mystery there that it's not just her having having a rather boring side adventure. It's intriguing enough, and it's informing the story. This is a great moment. Tennant is such a good actor. She is such an empathic performer, and of course the reveal of what that is gets me going. And that to me is very Doctor Who, because it refers to a secret, but it doesn't answer the secret. It makes a virtue of the mystery of the Doctor, but it doesn't try to solve or explain the mystery of the Doctor. And there must be a temptation to go, because I'm in charge of the show, I want to, I want to dig deep on something. I think the best for me is when it's a screwdriver works in the dark. So many good lines. Maintain the mystery but invoke it sometimes is the best way. Dr. Moon. If I was now, I didn't know that I didn't know that a Dr. Moon was a thing. I don't know, and I don't think it is, but within the context of this story, it is a thing. It's a virus checker. They've explained it. They've said it's a virus checker. It's a Dr. Moon, and you go, oh, Dr. Moon. That is so clever. He's a genius, really, and I think all of this stuff in this story, as I say, I'm not a sort of computery person, but it's explained enough in layman's terms, which of course saved becomes important. Oh, Anita. She's back in the States now. It's because she's got a really good part in this, and she's not, because usually we watch a Doctor Who from this period, and if it's an actor we didn't know going into it, and I didn't know her going into it, they go on to have an amazing career. And she's in The Hole too as an American reporter, and I think could have been one of those actors who's American but based in the UK, appearing in films like a lot of the troopers in Aliens, that for example, they're American actors who were based in the UK, and boom, and quite a lot of the Mission Impossible films have actors like Rolf Saxon and Morgan Deere who are American actors. But Matthew Marsh isn't American, but he always plays American. He may as well be American. He looks very American. If you can do such a thing. He looks American and Russian. Anyway, he's never been in Doctor Who, so let's not talk about him. Oh, and yeah, he's very good at. Why is there an extra thing? Well, we've been acting normally, but actually the death is in our midst. But yes, and Anita, she went back to the States and has been appearing in theatre in America. I looked her up when I just had an afternoon where I was going, I wonder what happened to her. um, because what the actors in Doctor Who get up to is very interesting to me. And the kids here, I've interviewed one of the kids here. One that the young man was doing drama with the daughter of a friend of Andrew Smith, who wrote Full Circle. So Andrew put me in touch with Philippa, the mum, and I then had a Zoom Skype chat with Alex, who plays Joshua, who told me that Catherine Tate completely ignored them. And you do that. That's a bit odd, isn't it? I do find it odd when successful actors who get on really well with their big co-stars, I then hear stories of them. But if you were slightly further down the ladder of importance, they just completely ignored you, and I find that really odd. Why would you do that? But anyway, I may be speaking out of turn, but why would you do that? Anyway, and this is Jason Pitt as Lee, who again, he does lots of computer voices, computer game voices, but hasn't done much on screen since this, which is a bit of a shame because he's got a nice part in this. But also the girl hasn't done an awful lot after this either. Eve, what's she called? Eve. It's not Eve Steele, I know, and Eve Newton. Eve Newton is the girl. I don't think she's done anything since this. I think Doctor Who is her only television credit, which is a shame because she's great. But I say it's a shame. Maybe she had one experience of Doctor Who, not Doctor Who, of television, and decided not to do anything. Decided not. See, I think we often think, actors who don't make it, their career didn't pan out. I think some actors could have made it and thought better of it. Maybe. Maybe they're the sensible ones, but I knew it's you. I didn't expect to see Miss Evangelista come back, but you can recognise her for the voice. But I think the spooky woman in black, it invokes that wonderful Susan Hill, the woman in black, but it's got a modern twist, and this is quite an odd and weird moment, isn't it? It's Miss Evangelista. And what is left of Miss Evangelista. That's pretty grim, isn't it? I am what is left. But Donna Noble has been saved. I like that. It's a very Moffat thing of going, let's take a word and give it a twist that means we hear it in a different way, or that it has a different consequence. Harry Peacock gets an ep credit. I'm sure that's not Harry Peacock in the suit. I'm sure once the actual acting. But if you want to see Harry Peacock doing some brilliant acting, do watch him as Ray Bloody Purchase in Toast of London, which probably says more about the condition of the acting world than I would care to imagine as well. But this is good old fashioned Doctor Who. It's literally running down corridors. And these corridors are rather fun because they're wood lined, and they have that. I think that's the last we see of other Dave as well. And no, Harry Peacock's got some lines there at least. So it's not quite a clip show for him, and I know he turns up in a lovely jumper at the end. but O.T. Fagbenley, who's other Dave, has had an amazing career, and he's in The Handmaid's Tale, isn't he? And he was in that brilliant thing about what's it called? We crash the crash of a place called We Work. I've seen him in a few American things, and he's really fitted into American dramas very well, and he has a wonderful sort of slightly airy, sarky persona that he can adopt in his acting performances that really makes him stand out. I think he's a lovely, lovely actor, and rather sort of wasting this. He's got a lovely energy as Dave, and it's I'm so sorry, and Tennant does that very well because he's not playing the sentimental side of it. He's sad, but he hasn't got time to stop and cry. But it's a way of conveying his "I'm so sorry," but giving it a different tone. And again, that has all been seeded. Moffat has the escape plan already worked out, or if he doesn't, he's put enough things in there that he can contrive an escape plan. That's what I like about Moffat's writing, is that so often he's, well, certainly when he's doing that, and I quite like the meta aspect of that, is that the girl is smiling and enjoying watching the Doctor escape from the monsters, even though she's actually part of the fiction as well. I think that's all very witty and clever. But I think Moffat, certainly when he was doing one or two episodes a year, his stuff fitted like a jigsaw. I think it gets less like that when he's showrunner, and I also am not sure of the wisdom of having it over more than one or two episodes. The fact that you can refer back to Miss Evangelista here, or the word saved, or the matter gun, or whatever, ties in from over a fortnight. But I think if you're expecting people to have to be hanging on to that stuff throughout a season, I think is either this is a brilliant, and again, because it's in the everyday, this is really horrifying, and it's very Doctor Who without being something quite like we've ever seen in Doctor Who. And then that is great, and it's just a simple. Well, I mean, I don't know how to do special effects, but it's a video effect where they've pulled their face apart a little bit. But again, because both of those things are parodies of the real world, there is something really unsettling. And yes, we're used to seeing monsters in the Yeti on the loo in Tooting Bec, which is very much at the heart of a lot of Doctor Who's appeal. But that's even more taking what is usual and perverting it, not by putting a monster on it, not by a juddering sort of dissonant juxtaposition, but actually by just, I mean, literally in the case of Miss Evangelista's face, tugging at the reality and distorting it into slightly, I was going to say unrecognisable shapes, but they're recognisable shapes, but they're shapes that are somehow wrong. And I think that's really impressive. Alex Kingston is a brilliant actress, and she, considering, at this point, she's on the show for a couple of weeks, or however long the shoot was, but for 2 weeks of screen time, I really do buy. She really does invest into the relationship between the Doctor and River, to the extent that actually I remember watching The 11th Hour in a pub. Jeremy Bentham had organised these pub events in London for Doctor Who fan season openers events in pubs, and we watched The 11th Hour in a pub, and then when the what's coming on this season montage occurred, good music too, and I like it when every death counts as well. I don't like it when Doctor Who's glib about death, and she's very good, Jessica Williams, but her screen CV, I think she does Shakespeare in the open air and stuff like that in the States now, but her screen career has not advanced too much beyond what she was doing a decade or so ago. It's a shame because she's great in this, but also it's actually comforting sometimes when you watch an old Doctor Who and it isn't full of people who've gone on to be really, really, really successful, because it's sometimes nice that somebody, like I always remember Stuart Bevan used to say, I've had a good career, but actually, Cliff Jones in The Green Death was probably my best part. And you go, wow. And because sometimes you think, we know somebody from a Doctor Who and they're big news to us, and it's like, it's nothing compared to the rest of their career. But actually, sometimes it was. Sometimes it was the highlight of their career. He's just realised the Saved, very good. So what I was saying about when River Song appeared in the montage at the end of the 11th hour, everyone cheered. And this is great, because it's like The Woman in Black. It's also like the Scottish Widows commercial. There is something about a woman in widow garb that is, again, it's one of those very simple images that are familiar to us all, but because they're placed in a Doctor Who context, suddenly become really spooky and terrifying. And again, it's a testament to Moffat being able to pluck something that is familiar and put it into a Doctor Who situation and make it really potent and powerful. So he's worked out what saved means, and this makes sense to me. Sometimes the scientific stuff in Doctor Who is a bit too much for me. I have to take it on trust or feel a bit stupid. I totally buy this. Okay, somebody's in danger. What do you do if you're worried about losing something? Well, what I've done with essays and voice notes and works in progress, I save them to a hard drive. Donna Noble has been saved. Really clever. That is... I mean, he does this so often with Doctor Who. I think if I'd had one of the ideas that Stephen Moffat has that very cleverly plays with language or turns an everyday idea into a brilliant Doctor Who concept, I think I'd probably take the decade off. But he seems to me. In fact, I was talking to somebody when the Angels two-parter was being made. And they'd read the scripts and they knew what was going on, and they said he almost has too many ideas, because he gets impatient with a really good idea and then moves on to another one. So a really good idea can be wasted on a scene, whereas most people would use that for their whole story. And I think that's mirrored in his dialogue, with that I was referring to last week about the Doctor, firing on all cylinders. You can hear the synapses sparking as one idea after another comes out, and the Doctor's mouth is trying to keep up with his brain. I suspect that's quite close to how Moffat behaves as well. His creativity and his intelligence works. Oh, and that this is all quite interesting stuff as well. He could just have this person here to give you excellent exposition and explain the story, but instead he goes, well, she was stupid in that world, but let's shift the IQ by a decimal point but not make her beautiful. And I think he adds another layer to the storytelling. It's not a massively important thing, but it's useful. It means that this Miss Evangelista can tell Donna the stuff that she needs to know, but beyond that, it also is able to make a point about her new perspective now that nobody looks at her in the way that they used to look at her because she was beautiful, but actually she's worth listening to, particularly now because she's cleverer than she was, and how we judge people. So it's the story's not about that. It's not an overarching part of it, but it's useful texture that helps this piece of storytelling and helps the adventure to be intelligent and thoughtful. And that's brilliant. That idea that you can get cross with your daddy and switch him off and then immediately regret it. She's great, Eve Newton. She's probably 157 now. No, but she's not. But what if she's, this is 15, 16, 17 years later. So she'll be a young woman now. Probably being very sensible. I remember looking up Florence Hoth, who's so good in The Empty Child, The Doctor Dances, and she's, I think, an estate agent now, and quite happily so. And again, just kind of went, I think I'll just do a proper job. This is somebody who was winning awards and doing amazing stuff and brilliant. He's now, I think he's great in this episode. I think when the stuff gets really important and the family stuff needs to be invoked, I think this is where Steve Pemberton shows his worth. I think he's excellent at this dramatic stuff. Having had my misgivings, and I don't know why, because I do think he's such a good actor. It's just not perhaps quite the fit I would have had for him, and yet he's so versatile and brilliant at all sorts of different parts. I don't know. Sometimes it's a matter of taste. He's certainly not doing anything wrong, and he certainly does bits that I think are fantastic in this. And because they're not blatant about the Doctor and Rivers relationship, again, I kind of like that, because I can have my cake and eat it. I like the idea that the Doctor is not a sexual being who doesn't have romantic trysts. Why? Because that's the image that I've built up around the show. I want the show. I treasure the fact. There's Alex. He's probably a grown up now as well. He was a very sweet interviewee. Although he misunderstood me. I've always remembered this. I said, so what's it like when you go into audition? Are you're checking out the competition? You're looking at the other people and going, oh, I wonder if they'll be. And he inferred that to mean, was I checking them out? As in, was he, were you eyeing them up? So his response to that question was, well, no, we weren't doing that. But sort of immediately it made me feel like I'd come across as a bit of a weirdo, even though that wasn't the intent of the question. And that wasn't his inference either. It's just that his taking of, it's a very Moffat thing. I'd used a word and he'd inferred that word slightly differently and put a whole different perspective on it. But it made me worried that I'd come across, that's really terrifying. I'd believe you more if you'd spoken to them. But she is very good. She is very, very good. And I think this is great. Again, I think I'd been slightly nonplussed by the dynamic change here, because I'd been used to Donna being part of the Doctor's story, but actually this Donna's story running in parallel is really, really important, and it's got many, many more sort of shocks and dramatic moments than I tend to think. I think I tend to think of them usually fishing, or her wandering around the grounds with Dr. Moon, whereas actually there's the kids in the park, the kids disappearing. This is real, probably divorced from the library stuff. That would be a scary Doctor Who, maybe a scary Doctor Who episode 1, though I think it's because we're not used to seeing that kind of stuff that's a sort of weird mystery in an episode 2, where we feel this is much more the sort of thing, stuff flying about and things going crazy. Poor old Anita, you can't have much of this on your show reel if your face is hidden behind it. I really like this scene. Oh, he's very good. I was talking to Shez this morning about why we cry when kindness and happiness happens. I've been watching some of the documentaries on the 7/7 bombings, and was telling Shez not about the terrible stories, but about the moments of kindness and the moments of decency that people exhibited to people who'd been caught up in it. And I cried as I was telling her them, and I'm not a lachrymose person generally. And we talked about why we cry when we think about kindness, and I think it's because when we see sadness or danger, we try not to show emotion, because in the jungle that would be when we're vulnerable, and if you're vulnerable at times of sadness or danger, that's when you get gobbled up. Whereas if somebody is kind to you in the jungle and shows you feel safe, and when you feel safe, that enables you to indulge your emotions and to cry. And Moffat is very good at within drama, within danger, at giving us moments, because we think of him, I think, as Mr. Cynical, Mr. Funny, Mr. Clever, plot. I love this when he shouts, "'Cause she's family," and all this stuff about the motive behind keeping her sort of alive, as it were. It's like keeping her on life support, really. It's sweet, and it's a kindness, and of course, yes, they have to be careful that she's not a freak show. And I think it's a nice twist on the Doctor Who evil capitalist, in that actually what they're doing is benevolent, yes, to a member of their own family, and they wouldn't be able to do it if they weren't rich and all that, but that doesn't really matter. This is about the humanity behind this weird sci-fi idea, and her kindness has saved everybody in the library. And I find that deeply moving. I find that very human, and I find that very intelligent. And it's also very clever because it ties in the Dr. Moon, it ties in the she's been saved, etc., etc., etc. And I think Steve Pemberton acts it very well too. Beautiful. What a brilliant idea. And it explains the mystery of the girl, I think, without being a cop-out. It wasn't all a dream. It's the reality that she has constructed around her. And now we have a race against time. I totally believe when she says, I hate you sometimes, and he says, I know. Oh, what about the Vashta Narada? But when... oh, this is brilliant as well. I really like Tanita. That's brilliant. It's the way that, because you have to kill people off in these stories, but the way that we've seen two people die in this way already, so the fact that the Doctor is ahead of the creature means that this one biffs us in a different way. And Tennant is excellent. And again, the fact that he's engaging with the voice of the person that has just died. I think all of that is superb. Tennant is amazing. And yes, the individual deaths count. And I think in a show that has as much death as Doctor Who, it's a real skill to make them count. And again, I think we unfairly sometimes don't expect that with Moffat. One, because usually everybody lives, although actually they do in this as well, don't they? But also because I think, we know about his sarky, quippy humour, which is to my taste. I think he's very funny. But also his clever plotting and things that work backwards and forwards, etc., etc. Now, I do take this point. It's a bit like... Lux can manage without me. That should be on my gravestone, but for different reasons. I also love... I am a sucker for... Rogan does it in the Ark in Space, doesn't he? Somebody punching somebody, knocking them out in order that they can then sacrifice themselves. A coward would, of course, knock somebody out in order to make their own escape, but a brave person knocks out the hero and dies in their stead. So I'm a sucker for that bit of plot. I really believe that these two have known each other for a long time, and that is due to the chemistry between these two. I think they do such a good job, and it's really effective. And I think to make something unbearably moving about a relationship between two people that we have never seen at this point, I think is brilliant use of Doctor Who's time travel concept, in a way that uses it but doesn't get too clever with it, that uses it to emotional and dramatic effect, and that gives two absolutely terrific actors great material to work with. And this is acting in a kids show. Remember, this is a show that has to be suitable for children, and the sophistication of the emotions and the boldness with which they try and delve into how relationships work, but not in a way that's like boring adult dramas about divorce and stuff like that. This is about time and space and flesh-eating monsters. But it does what the parent show did rarely, which is really try and examine deep human emotions. And it could not work, and there could be too much of it. And I understand people who recoil from it because Doctor Who should be escapist adventure. But the whole I tell you my name and all of that, I think is terribly moving. I think it's terribly moving. And yet it doesn't say this is somebody he loved or kissed or anything like that. It leaves it hanging. And this is very sad as well. Because because it, I remember having conversations when I was younger about, what is real, and are we figments of somebody else's imagination, and that sort of digs into a sort of philosophical idea of what if reality is just what we construct inside ourselves. It's a bit of the Matrix thing. And poor old Donna, who thought she. And I also think other showrunners might have eventually found Lee for Donna, but he never does. Lee's out there somewhere, and they never got back together. Could he not have been in the end of time? Poor old Lee, poor old Jason Pitt. But there we go. That's the end of it. That lighting's phenomenal, isn't it? And this is a nice hero moment for Lux. Is he the only Doctor Who character to have a future Doctor Who episode named after him? This is superb. So this is all fabulous. But all of Jason Thompson's logical issues are not solved, but I choose to get carried away in the drama in the moment. It's beautifully paced and directed, and but this is clever because you think the story is over now, and yet it has a number of climaxes. But the Lux coming down the stairs and the Doctor looking dejected makes you feel like this is the end of the story, and now we just have the little bit of coda where we'll muse on what went wrong. We'll have happy, sad moments, and perhaps a bon mot to sum up the theme of the story, or the problems that our characters have to endure as time travelers who lose people. But actually, we get no. But you see, this is a proper relationship. Is that they're in that exchange. They're summing up their own shortcomings, but the fact that they're also all right. I'm always all right, and does all right mean not? Now you see, this is where, for example, some later writing in Doctor Who is less effective for me, because in Moffat and RTD Doctor Who, a character can say they're all right and mean they're not all right. Whereas in later Doctor Who, I think if a character's not all right, they sit in a cafe and tell each other they're not all right and why. And we get that. That actually gets us nothing apart from just that's really unfair, and it's never explored again. And I kind of like the fact that it's never explored again, but it does make me feel so, and I kind of forget it every time. I sort of forget about Lee, really, and then we watch the thing, and Lee's really nice, and he obviously has a great thing with Donna, and that's mostly due to Catherine Tate being so great, because she's often acting with nothing but concepts, really, in that side story that she has, and she's brilliant at it. And then he has that bit where he's like, "Oh no!" and he's, and unlike Miss Evangelista, if he'd been saved without his stutter, he would have been okay. But I don't see that as an anti-stutter depiction of a disability. I just see it as there as a thing that. It does say something about Donna, and she sort of admits that says something about Donna, but I don't think it's being mean to Lee. It's just using that. But so I think we can get bored getting segued in justifying things sometimes, and I know I probably do slightly too often. But this is very clever, because this feels like they're walking off into the sunset somewhere else. The tea is getting cold. It's the end of the story. Oh. And we've got this voiceover is the end. And then suddenly, so this is a brilliant sleight of hand, sleight of screwdriver, sleight of direction. I slightly, I slightly balk at the Bill and Tedness of, we've planted this there all this time, but I think it works under these circumstances because the screwdriver's been set up, and the ghosting has been set up, and this is brilliant because, aside from all the, the clever plotting and the timey-wimey and blah, 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 it also sets us up for the Doctor has to do a heroic run as the music swells and then dive into the special effect thing, which again means the special effects not just the fun kind of, oh, we're lowering into the thing. It's the big hero moment, and I like a voiceover too. It always gives the Doctor an episode a slightly different energy. And of course, it's a Stephen Moffat story, so of course everybody lives. And the smile from the little girl, I think, is very sweet. And these effects are great. I mean, they're par for the course in this sort of Doctor Who. And yes, so they have all been saved, so they all sort of live. I mean, I'm not sure how happy I'd be that I live in a computer simulation, but she gets to live, they're safe. I assume you get to eat, and do you get to screw? I hope so. Haven't I mused on whether you get to screw when you're saved in a previous Doctor Who story? It's obviously very important to me that if I die and get resurrected, it needs to be in a condition where I can still anyway. But I like the way that in the afterlife everybody obviously decides to wear different shades of beige. So I think that's, to me, a subtext of, it's nice and everything, but no, it's never too exciting. You'll only ever be beige and white. But at least Proper Dave turns up in a nice cardigan at the end, having just been a voiceover on a skeleton. But they're all lovely. But that's that, and I sometimes think Moffat should be brave and actually have people die. But Doctor Who has so much death in it, and that's why I like Doctor Who, because to me those are the scenes that are always the most emotional for me, where somebody dies heroically or somebody loses somebody that means something to them, because and especially as it's sort of containable and done in a children's drama, I think it's a great way of getting kids to be empathic and to be sad in a manageable situation. I think it's actually Doctor Who plays quite an important role in that, and that it's one of the few children's programs that also has horrible death in it, and that was always its sort of appeal to me, which is curious, isn't it? And the click fingers thing, very nice. Everybody lives in the Moffats, and but that's right, because at this stage she's only writing once a year, and if once, because it's only really the Savages, isn't it? Although Captain Edal's fate is left up in the air, but Stephen shoots him, so you'd hope Stephen hasn't killed him. And Fury from the Deep, where and you could say the Celestial Toymaker because nobody in it is real, but they're about the only ones, aren't they, in Classic Who where nobody dies. And actually it ends on a very, very sweet note, so there is a heart, there's real, he has a sentimental is sounds pejorative, and I don't mean it like that. He has an empathic core that behind all the cleverness and the sarkiness, a bit like Doctor Who, really. The facade of intellect and humour hides a heart of gold. So there we are. What a cast as well. What an absolute cast, and what an episode. Yeah, and I think I like that episode more every time I watched it. As I say, I liked it first time round, but I remember not quite being blown away by it. And I think that's partially to do with the fact that Moffat always slightly changes the rules in part 2. You think you're watching a story that is going to go one way, and then it does a slight sort of change in direction. It makes you go, oh, I was sort of thought I knew where I was heading, and now you're expecting me to pull over into this lay-by and watch Catherine Tate go fishing with a guy. But actually all of that stuff worked really, really well. I think I just forget how well it works until you go back into it, because I guess I know what how the mystery is solved now, which I didn't know the first time around. And so I sort of see it as, well, I don't need to really invest in this because I know what it is. But then actually when when I watch it, you go, no, it's still giving everything. It's still telling the story. It's not letting the pace up. It's giving Catherine Tate some excellent material. So I have to choose my 3 favourite things and my bonus thing for the whole thing. Well, I think Catherine Tate in the playground, seeing every child being her 2 children, and Miss Evangelista revealing her video effect face is brilliant, because it's so Doctor Who, yet without being something that Doctor Who has ever done before, and it really helps with that element that obviously can't have doesn't have, it's not like the library that has the danger and the aliens and the monsters and stuff flying around, but it has to be disturbing. And I think I alluded to it before, it can easily be disturbing having a Cyberman on the steps of St Paul's Cathedral, or a gas mask with a child's voice. They are, or aliens in front of a familiar landmark, something familiar juxtaposed with something strange, or 2 familiar things coming together to create a weird vibe. And this takes that even further, I think. We know the Scottish Widow image, but we also know the Woman in Black, which that kind of invokes. But we know children in a playground, but the idea that all the children look like your children, which shouldn't be disturbing and yet somehow is, it's a really clever use of the things that Doctor Who does well. So that is going to be one of them. I love the whole, I think Steve Pemberton does it well, the whole scene where it's revealed because she's family, and the whole very clever reveal of what the child in her room is all about. It's all about a child that was dying being saved, and the about turn of the capitalist actually doing something kind, but the cleverness of resolving that it wasn't all a dream. I mean, it was more sophisticated than that. But the Doctor Moon and all of that, it's I think that's really clever and bound up so beautifully. It's really good and really strong. I think I like Anita's death because it's a different way of doing the death, and Tennant does it very, very well, and it's gut-wrenching, but in a different way that's also a bit scary as well, because it means he's communing with the alien when we thought he was trying to keep somebody in peril alive, and it's another big. There are so many dramatic sort of suddenly. Well, actually, is it that, or is it the conclusion? Is it the false ending that suddenly the Doctor goes blah, blah, blah? Because I think my bonus, you see, has to be. I think the rapport between David Tennant and Alex Kingston, and the whole way that they convey the idea that these 2 people have known each other for such a long time and are really important to each other, and they tell all those off-screen stories purely by their interaction. I love the way, I hate you sometimes. I totally buy that. And I'm going to fold into that as well the fact that she knows his name, which is less to do with their acting, although they act that moment very well. But it's a really good way of conveying how important this person is to the Doctor. I think the Doctor and River Song in this story, particularly in this climax, and the fact that she sacrifices herself, I think all of that speaks volumes. And a lot of it is noises off, which I love. They don't get blatant with it, which I love. Because you can still choose to say, but they weren't at it. Even though I demand to be at it in the afterlife, I don't want it to be Doctor Who to be at it in this world or the next, or even off-screen adventures. That's just my moral position. You can justify anything these days if you say it's your moral position. So the Doctor and River Song and their relationship, particularly the rapport between Kingston and Tennant, but I will add into that the fact that she knows his name. So do I choose the death of Anita? Well, I could sacrifice one of the other ones. The cowl moment I love, Miss Evangelista and the kids, Anita's death, and the false ending. So I'm going to have to choose 3 out of those 4. I'm going to sacrifice Anita. I'm sorry, Anita. just because I think I would always choose the moment somebody dies heroically or sadly in Doctor Who, because it's very much my meat and drink, and I'm sure I sound like a broken record. Those scenes are always the ones that I used to sort of enact and want to be part of, and I think it's because, we sort of play act terrible moments in order to hopefully then be able to negotiate those emotions when they happen in real life. But no, so double kids, wonky Miss Evangelista in the playground. Although the moment where her kids just disappear as well is pretty extraordinary, and that's purely down to Catherine Tate. The Cal reveal that because she's family, Cal, she's been saved. She's actually, that whole resolution of that plot, the fact that it's scientifically very smart, but also emotionally very true and very moving, and the false ending. It's gone. It's finished. They've gone off into the sunset. Somewhere else, the tea's getting cold. Oh, hang on, sonic screwdriver. It's a brilliant sleight of hand. The director Eros Lin really makes us feel like the story has ended, but also it's very clever plotting and scripting as well. It's scripted really well by Moffat, so it's a great synthesis of everybody. And Tennant again acts it superbly, and I love the fact that he then gets to do a hero run and dive into the special effect too. It's every piece of the jigsaw there is absolutely attuned to making it emotionally and dramatically as good and engaging on every level as it possibly can be. This is premier A-list top talent writing, acting, directing, program making at the top of its game for a program that's suitable for children on a Saturday tea time. We've never had it so good. So yeah, glorious. Let's see what. And then my bonus thing is the Tennant and Kingston Doctor River Song report and backstory. What is Richard Smith of the Something Who podcast going to say about Forest of the Dead? He's saved onto the iCloud. Here he is.
Here are my 3 things for Forest of the Dead. Number 1, the whispered word between River and the Doctor. Again, it's a really small moment, but both actors sell it really well, and they explain the significance through their actions.
Yeah, I suppose I get a soupçon of a point for that, a little dust mite of a point for that. I opened it up to everything, really, didn't I? And that was my bonus thing, but it doesn't matter. The bonus doesn't have to tally with the bonus. It's just another way of us choosing a thing. So I think I get Richard completely wiped the floor with me in episode 1, so I don't think there's any scoring at stake here, but I think we have a little bit of crossover there. So I'll take not a whole point, but perhaps a little bit, a Dewey Decimal point of a decimal point of a point. Yes. Shut up. Here we are. Number 2.
The second is, why are there 6 people? It reminds me of that moment at the end of the Moonbase episode 2. When the Doctor realises that a Cyberman has been hiding in plain sight in one of the beds. Here, it's someone in a spacesuit, but it's a great scary moment when the monsters aren't somewhere out there. They're here, amongst us. Yes,
beautifully put, Richard. I think that's the absolute appeal of that. I think Moffat knows exactly what he's doing when he taps into that, and it's brilliant. It's not unfamiliar, but that's no bad thing. And it's just that it's all very well. Oh, they're trying to get in. Oh, they're chasing us, but oh my God, they're here right now. Brilliant. Now, and then we're helped by the fact that the monster moves quite slowly, but that is explained. It's because it's a cadaver being manipulated by microscopic organisms, so it is going to move slowly, but it will never tire, so it doesn't mean it's sort of clunky in the way that like sort of shambling sea devils might be. The slowness is actually part of its scariness. It's sort of more zombified. So again, these are very cleverly conceived and realised creatures, and Moffat is a clever enough writer to mix up the way that they appear threatening at different points in the story. It's not just a series of, oh, they're in the room again. He's very clever like that. This story more than anything has reminded me of why it was so exciting that he'd been announced as the showrunner, because he really understands when he's at his peak, how exactly to make all of the disparate things that make Doctor Who work well. He understands how all of those can be deployed, and also is smart enough to be able to do slight twists on them that don't spoil them or betray them, but make them effective but in a different way, or a way that's familiar but also different at the same time. And that's Doctor Who, isn't it? Familiar but different at the same time. Number 3.
The third is about Donna. Catherine Tate really sells the loss to Donna, first of her children and then her perfect man Lee. Like a dream, it all passed in a few hours, minutes even, but it felt like years to her, and you really sense that.
Yeah, I could have chosen Catherine Tate actually as the whole thing, but as I say, she's slightly compromised by the fact that she didn't speak to the child I interviewed. But she is absolutely brilliant. And actually, I could have chosen I'm all right. Does all right mean not actually all right? Because that's how we conduct our lives a lot, and that's I think how Doctor Who has to be. Doctor Who is somebody who is brave and funny because it's the only thing you can be if you've witnessed that much death, disaster, and loss. You either become a gibbering wreck or a cruel psychopath. And the Doctor's answer is to go, no, I shall do this with self-sacrifice and with humour and with decency, and sometimes that actually involves damping down my feelings and damping down the turmoil, and not allowing it to manifest itself into spite or vengeance or cruelty. Current internet tweeterers take note, and that's where the sense of humour, and also I think that underlying melancholy that the best Doctors have comes from. It's not a self-serving melancholy. It's not a demonstrative melancholy. It's not a, oh, look at me, now you have to make compromises for me because I'm so sad melancholy. It is somebody who has seen terrible, terrible things and has had to live, and lives by, trying to do good and trying to be funny, and trying to do the right thing, and not get consumed by the darkness. And actually that exchange about going, I'm all right, that speaks to how we deal with emotion and difficulty, and is very profound. He's good at the human condition. I like his in Bleak, happy is sad for deep people, which resounds and speaks volumes about our present day psychology. He's smart. He's more than quips and Bill and Teddery. He's brilliant. He's really good. Bonus thing. I've already told you my bonus thing, but as I say, there's no rules about what this thing must be and whether they tie in with other choices of ours.
And finally, a bonus thing. Well, I guess it's the obvious one. It's the Doctor saving River right when it feels like it's all over. While he was showrunner, Stephen Moffat took the death and subsequent reanimation of key characters to another level. But here, it's still fairly fresh. Sure, we had Everybody Lives in the 2-part story Empty Child, Doctor Dances from Series 1. And then even earlier in this series, Jenny comes back to life as a Doctor's daughter. But here, River's life in the universe has come to an end. And this final part is just a coda. And it probably doesn't bear too much thinking about, but in a story that talks about nightmares and dreams, we end with a sweet one.
Aw. Well, there we go. I kind of chose that, so I get, a point and a little bit of a point, but that is not the point anyway. The point is to hear from somebody who isn't me, to get their opinions, and for me to either agree or disagree or go, why didn't I think of that? And there was plenty to be had there. And thanks to Richard for joining in, and thanks to him for reacquainting me with a story. I sort of forget how brilliant I think it is. I don't think it really puts a foot wrong, although Jason Thompson has cruelly pointed out some obvious flaws in it, but I kind of don't care, because I think its emotional beats and its dramatic reveals and its clever twists are enough, aside from the fact that it also gets the basics correct. It has scary monsters, scary moments, lots of action running through corridors, moral dilemmas for our characters, hero moments for the Doctor, Great bits for the great side bits for the companion, really interesting guest characters and cast, and just some bits that are mind-bogglingly, breathtakingly good in terms of their science fiction imagination, but also the emotional repercussions of the science fiction things that are happening. This is top tier, top notch, beautiful Doctor Who. Thank you, Richard. What would you like to plug about yourself and your outpourings?
Toby's given me the opportunity to talk to you about the 2 podcasts that I make. And perhaps you might want to give them a listen once you've heard this. Something Who is the Doctor Who podcast. It's a discussion of 2 stories with a team usually made up of about 4 people, and some of them you might have heard of. Tim Burrows and Paul Morris from the Missing Episode podcast are off and on. So is Gav Rymil from Terry Nation Army, and Giles Sparrow's my other regular guest. And then we also have Gary Gillett, Ellie, also known as TARDIS Monkey, Andrew Ireland, the creator of that remake of Mission to the Unknown. And I've also interviewed Toby, Chris Chapman, Jeremy Bentham, Paul Hayes, Rich Tipple and Kieran Hyman, and Jack Rayner in various episodes. You can give us a listen at somethingwho.podbean.com. My other podcast is called If It's Hurting, It's Not Working. It explores all aspects of work and how to make it work for you. Each episode is a chat with my friend and colleague Emily, and in some episodes we also talk with other people to get their perspectives. I hope you'll find some useful ideas to help with your working life. You can find that at ifhurtnotwork.podbean.com, and we have our own website at ifhurtnot.work. With both podcasts, you generally get a sketch at the start and some outtakes at the end, so if nothing else, we hope to raise a smile. Thanks for inviting me on your podcast, Toby, and thanks everyone for listening to my thoughts about Doctor Who.
Thanks, Richard. As you can hear, Richard's a great podcaster, really interesting bloke, undemonstrative but thoughtful and clear and intelligent and good to talk to. And I really do enjoy Something Who, and he surrounds himself by interesting folks who all have, I think, equally sort of clear and thoughtful perspectives on the show, although not always in agreement with each other. So, he's a good bloke, Richard. And I've not listened to the work podcast, but I think there needs to be more of that sort of thing. And certainly I can imagine it being very helpful and well rendered in Richard's hands, because he knows what he's doing. And as I say, he's a good guy. So thanks, Richard. I really appreciate that contribution. I appreciate you listeners for listening. And I'm going to catalogue this particular... I'm going to go and update my library and catalogue this particular story in the extra special stories section of my library, which, where everything is pretty much rated. It was going to be called Rivers Run, wasn't it, this story? It was going to be called Rivers Run, but they changed it to Forest of the Dead. Rivers Run, I think, is a more unusual title. It was announced as Rivers Run, and it makes sense on a couple of levels and is very clever. Forest of the Dead is a bit like when they changed The Hungry Earth to Frontios, or The Crooked Smile to The Happiness Patrol. You go, but with those, I think The Hungry Earth and The Crooked Smile are better titles that I would have preferred, because the more trad titles aren't quite so cool. Actually, and I think Delta and the Bannermen has a sort of cheekier elan than Flight of the Shimmerin, although again, I do quite like Flight of the Shimmerin. But Crooked Smile is better than Happiness Patrol. Hungry Earth is better than Frontios. In terms of titles for that original story, the episode that's called The Hungry Earth is not as good as Frontios. Sorry, the modern series fans. It's still a great title, though, The Hungry Earth. But Rivers Run, I think, is a more beguiling title than Forest of the Dead. And I always think of Forest of Fear, which is a choose-your-own-adventure book, which was the first of those fighting fantasy books that I got when I was a kid. So it holds a special place in my heart. But Forest of the Dead is nothing like as good or thoughtful or intriguing a title as Rivers Run. But I kind of prefer it, because I prefer its kind of trad. It does exactly what you need it to do. It's an invasion of the hoo-has. Forest of the Dead. I kind of sometimes want that. Rivers Run is thoughtful and beguiling and works on a number of, but Forest of the Dead tells you exactly what you're getting, even though it is a metaphorical forest. So yeah, I'm glad they changed that one, even though I feel slightly guilty about it. But that's just me being very, at heart, you see, I'm very trad. But the river of my segues has now run dry, and all it remains for me to do is to make sure this forest dies. This forest of words is now, how tortuous is this? This forest of words is now dead, and the podcast has come to an end. Well, but then again, what I'm doing is I've given this a number of false and not very satisfying endings, but I've given, so like Forest of the Dead, there's been a number of moments where the story could have ended, but instead I've given you a number of surprises after that moment has passed. Now, when Stephen Moffat did it, it was very effective, and the jury is out as to whether mine was, but it's at least an accurate homage, if not a very good one. Goodbye. Thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, Richard Smith, who is on Twitter at Richard1J1Smith. And he's also got the podcast Something Who, which is on Twitter at something_who, and at If Hurt Not Work is his other non-Who podcast. I'm grateful to Richard and to the patrons who make this podcast possible, and they include Nev Fountain, Matt Foy, David Gates, David Gillespie Pratt, Charles Gears, Lisa Gledhill, James Gould, Graham, Paul Greaves, Paul J. Guest, Angus Gulliver, Aaron Gullius, William Hames, John Hancock, Steve Hatcher, Matthew Harris, Richard Harris, Michael Harvey, Duncan Harvey, Ronald Hayden, Paul Hayes, Matthew Herbert, Stephen Hill, Simon Hodges, Andrew Hodgson, Sam Hollingsworth, Matthew Hooliston, Darren Howard, Neil Humphreys, Tom Hunter Watt, Steve Herr, Ed Jefferson, Robert Jewell, Judith Jackson, Wim Keith, Peter Kelly, James Kearsey, Matthew Kilburn and Colin Kilpatrick. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like to be named in the closing credits, well, that's one of the perks of being a patron. The higher up the patron tiers you go, the more you get mentioned. But everybody gets mentioned, unless you don't want to be. But that is, this is probably the most trivial of things there in Patreonville, which is at patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, where for as little as £3 a month, but you can go up as high as you like, you get advance releases, bonus releases, you get a couple of your own exclusive things, a podcast called Far Too Much Information. I need to catch up on those, though, to be honest. I've got the material all together, I just need to do it, but I insist on putting it together with nice music and stuff. And also monthly AMAs, they come thick and fast, usually at least once, sometimes a couple a month, but also backstage material from the Blu-ray features and DVD extras that I've made, sometimes interviews from my archive, often ones that have never been heard before, or extended cuts of ones that have been out there in various forms. So lots of goodies, usually 3 drops per week, as well as pictures of my dog, and you're certainly ahead when it comes to the releases of these podcasts, which the general public get a few months, sometimes up to 6 months after you would be listening to this if you were listening to it via the Patreon feed. £3 a month is the lowest tier, and everything is available at the lowest tier. It's fairly egalitarian that way. If you don't want to be tied up to a monthly commitment, you can donate instead at ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke, or it might be that you've just listened to a particular episode of something you've enjoyed especially and want to drop your appreciation that way. But there are non-financial ways to help out as well and show your appreciation. If appreciate this stuff, you do by giving these thumbs up, 5 stars, a few lines of review, to like and subscribe everywhere you find the stuff that I throw out there. It really does help, and it helps to attract other people to this neck of the woods. And yeah, that's a way you can do it without it costing you anything. But I'm grateful to you for listening. Thanks for being there. I'm on social media, so I have to haul all that stuff out at Toby Hadoke on Twitter/X, also at Hadoke Podcasts for just stuff about these podcasts. I'm also on Instagram at Toby.Hadoke. I have a Facebook page, And is that it? I've got a website, tobyhadoke.com. I also have a comedy club called Excess Malarkey, which has its own website and Instagram feed as well. And I'd love it if you came to the comedy club. We put on really, really good acts, and there's always something going on. And Doctor Who is sometimes mentioned there as well. In fact, the comedy club has plaques for David Warner, Bernard Kay, and John Abernethy, and it sometimes has a picture of Christopher Eccleston up, and one of its patrons is Ruth Madeley, and Russell T Davies has been there to watch theatre in the venue as well. He's also been to the comedy club once. So, yeah. And the War Doctor, Jonathan Carley, is a regular at my comedy club, Excess Malarkey. So, it's a positive Who fest. Well, there we go. I really enjoyed that. I hope you did too. And I don't think I've got much to add. It's been quite a long one, and I suppose I need to get on with my day. But I hope you're all very well. It is a bit scary, isn't it? I remember when it was when Moffat being showrunner was the future, when Matt Smith was the future. And it just seems to go quicker and quicker and quicker, doesn't it? But anyway, all good stuff. And I think I'll leave it there. We'll have a very lame post-credit sequence today because it's an hour and 25-minute podcast, and I think that's plenty. But yeah, good luck to you. Have a nice day. Yay! I think yeah. Registering quite low on the profundity meter today, Toby. I know. Going to go and have a cup of tea.